A young woman, a man, a park. Listen to the story.
The police tape marks out a murder scene as people lay flowers close to where a young woman was killed as she made her way through her local park.
And using a warning triangle, a metal one from his car, he struck her 34 times in the head, and he struck her with such ferocity.
Sabina was a beautiful, kind, caring soul, family-orientated person. Nothing's making sense to us. Why was she taken from us? We just don't know. They're inconsolable. There's just no words you can say.
It's late summer, and on a Friday evening, there's a lot going on in London. Tourists are wrapping up their sightseeing. Locals are relaxing at home or getting ready for a night out. One of them is a young woman who plans to go out for drinks with friends. When she leaves her home, it's just starting to get dark. She wants to take a shortcut through a nearby park, something she's done many times before. But this evening, the young woman will never make it to her friends. Sabina Nessa is 28 years old and works at a primary school in the London district of Lewisham. She first completed her studies at the University of Greenwich and later at the University of Bedfordshire. Her parents are incredibly proud of her. They had moved to London from Bangladesh before Sabina and her 3 sisters were born, so their children could have better access to education. And their plan worked out perfectly. Sabina found her passion in this field as well. She became a teacher and discovered her calling. She loves her job, but working with young children is, of course, also very tiring. That's why on September 17th after work, she plans to have a relaxed evening at a pub. It's just around the corner. She only has to walk about 5 minutes. As you probably know, in Britain, and especially in England, there's a strong pub culture. Going out for a few drinks or a nice meal at the pub is a weekly routine for many people. And it's the same for 28-year-old Sabina. And since it's Friday, nothing stands in the way of a fun evening with a few drinks. Sabina lives on Estelle Road in the Kidbrooke neighborhood, a pretty quiet part of London. It's a bit calmer than the city center, but still has everything a big city can offer. At the Depot pub, Sabina plans to meet a friend that evening. A few other acquaintances might join as well. It's a casual meetup, but Sabina is a very punctual and responsible person, so she wants to be there on time. That evening, though, she's running a little late. So instead of walking along the main road like she normally does, she takes a shortcut through Cater Park. Usually, she makes sure to walk on main roads, especially at night, but she's in a hurry, and Cater Park isn't that large or confusing. It's right near several apartment buildings, and the park is especially popular with families. There's a well-built playground, but also areas of more untouched nature, with tall grass and bushes. And it's behind one of those bushes that Sabina's body will be found the next day. While she's not looking, a man suddenly jumps out and hits her with a metal object. 34 times. Sabina doesn't stand a chance. When a passerby finds Sabina's body in a bush in Cater Park, he first thinks the person is just unconscious. But then he sees how badly injured she is. Police arrive within minutes, but by then, nothing can be done for the 28-year-old. Sabina had already died the evening before from her injuries. Along with the severe blunt force injuries, she'd also been strangled, which was likely the final cause of death. There are no forensic traces on her body that could lead to the attacker. However, the park is thankfully under video surveillance, and even though it was already dark at the time of the attack, the killer made a critical mistake. As I mentioned earlier, the weapon was a metal object, but not just any object. It was a reflective traffic triangle. Because of that, even in the darkness, the reflection of the weapon is visible on the surveillance footage. Over the next few days, the police work around the clock to collect and review more footage from cameras in the area around the park. Step by step, they're able to find clearer images of the suspect, until they're finally able to put together a full description of the man. For a short time, a 38-year-old man from Lewisham is arrested, but the suspicion against him can't be confirmed, so he is released. The hunt for Sabina's killer continues. Officers review hundreds of hours of video footage, and finally they get a major breakthrough. In one of the recordings, the suspect is seen carrying the murder weapon toward a car, a Nissan Micra. The car's license plate is clearly visible on the footage, and based on that, along with the suspect's movements, police now have enough to issue an arrest warrant for the registered owner of the vehicle. In the middle of the night, police raid an apartment in the English town of Eastbourne. The suspect's name is Kosi Selimaj, and he allows himself to be arrested without resistance. At first, he says nothing, but the sneakers police find in his apartment say more than enough. There are traces of blood on them, and later analysis clearly confirms that the blood belongs to the murdered Sabina. Kosi Selimaj is 36 years old and originally from Albania. As a teenager, he moved to Greece, and later as a young man to England. There, he works delivering pizzas and takes on odd jobs. He doesn't live in the capital of London, but in the coastal town of Eastbourne. Thanks to witness statements and phone data, police are able to reconstruct the suspect's movements on the day of the murder. On September 17th, the day Sabina was killed, Kosi had booked a room at the Grand Hotel in Eastbourne. You might wonder why he would book a hotel room in the town where he already lives. The reason is that his estranged wife works at that exact hotel. She had only managed to leave him in the summer of 2021, and I say managed because he had repeatedly been violent toward her, including episodes where he strangled her. This separation causes two problems for Kosi. First, he loses his wife. Second, he could potentially lose his right to stay in the UK. All of this happens after Brexit, and Kosi only has permission to live in the UK because of his marriage. His wife is Romanian, which makes her an EU citizen. Under the EU settlement scheme, even after Brexit, EU citizens are allowed to stay in the UK without British citizenship, and that right is extended to their spouses. That's why Kosi is allowed to live in the UK, because of his marriage, even though he's not an EU citizen himself. To put it simply, if the divorce goes through, there's a good chance Kosi will have to leave England. So now he's under serious pressure, though it's entirely his own fault, because as mentioned, he had been violent towards his wife multiple times. When he shows up on September 17th at her workplace, acting as a hotel guest, his ex-wife panics. An argument breaks out, and one of the hotel employees calls emergency services. The emergency line does speak briefly with the employee, but he apparently manages to calm the situation down over the phone, so no police car is dispatched to the hotel. In the end, Kosi checks into the hotel. Later, as he's leaving his room, he sees his ex again in the hotel's parking lot. He demands sex from her, but she of course refuses. After that, Kosi Selimaj drives away in his Nissan. He first goes from Eastbourne to Brighton, then from there to southeast London. He parks his car at Pegler Square in Kidbrooke. Police believe he came to London with the deliberate intention of committing a crime. At a local Sainsbury's supermarket, he buys a rolling pin. Investigators suspect he may have planned to use the kitchen tool as a weapon. Kosi then wanders around Kidbrooke until in the early evening he sees Sabina, who is on her way to the pub. When she turns into the park, Kosi follows her, and once no one else is nearby, he attacks, but not with the rolling pin. Instead, he uses a warning triangle, the kind that's stored in the trunk of most cars. He hits Sabina more than 30 times. Then he drags her into a bush, pulls down her clothes, and strangles her there. Once Sabina is dead, he simply leaves her lying there. There are no signs of sexual assault on her body, but police still believe that Kosi was sexually motivated. After all, his ex had just rejected him earlier that same day when he demanded sex. After the attack, Kosi drives back home. On the way, he stops in Kent to throw the warning triangle into a river. A little after midnight, he's back at the Grand Hotel in Eastbourne, and just goes back to his room as if nothing ever happened. At first, Kosi stays silent when questioned by police. It takes several interviews before he finally decides to confess. But even then, he says only the bare minimum. That's why the exact motive behind the crime against Sabina remains unknown to this day, and likely always will be. Kosi Selimaj's defense team tries to challenge the murder charge by having him admit that he is responsible for Sabina's death, but claim that he did not murder her. This could have left room for the case to be seen as manslaughter or an accident, rather than premeditated murder. But in the end, Kosi pleads guilty to murder. He is sentenced to 36 years in prison. However, he does not appear in court during sentencing, choosing instead to avoid taking responsibility, even in front of Sabina's family. Instead, Kosi's sister and his father travel from Albania to attend the hearing. They want to show respect to Sabina Nessa's loved ones, at least in some way. After Sabina's murder, several vigils are held across London, drawing hundreds of people, including high-ranking politicians. Her murder sparks a major public debate about women's safety in London, because Sabina was killed by pure chance. Her killer had no personal motive. He didn't even see Sabina as a person. He saw her only as a potential target for his violence. Shortly after Sabina's murder, the mayor of London described the daily violence against women as a kind of epidemic. The case later makes headlines, mainly because at first there's hardly any media coverage at all. In similar cases where the victim doesn't appear to have a migrant background, the reporting is often much more extensive. Only after heavy pressure from social media does the coverage of Sabina Nessa's murder start to grow, even while her killer is still on the loose. Sabina's sister, Jabina Islam, becomes active after the murder, raising awareness around violence against women, femicide, and everyday risks that women face. She also takes part in a major feminist campaign by the BBC. As part of that, she shares a quote found in Sabina's notebook after her death: "Love yourself more than anyone else on this planet." And that brings us to the end of today's video. Sadly, I've already made too many videos about cases just like this. Crimes that happened only because the victims were women. But it's important to keep talking about this issue, and I hope I've contributed to that in some way here. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. And if you have any suggestions for future cases, leave those too. You'll also be supporting Truthscape by doing so. Every interaction increases the chance that the video gets shown to people who haven't subscribed to Truthscape yet. I hope to see you in the next video. Here you can find the next chilling case. Click on it. Until then, see you soon. Stay safe.